Hey everyone, this is Joshua Kirk here with you once again, and now it's time for episode 88 of Album of the Day, in which, I haven't done videos in a while, but at the same time it isn't very surprising, since I really only do them on the weekend. But, this spring break I've been on a trip to Florida, I went to Sarasota, and I went to Siesta Beach, and went to a couple of Orioles games for spring training. Had some good food and all that stuff. So yeah, that's the reason why I haven't done videos for so long, because spent 4 days there, and a couple of days ago just got back home from Florida, back here to my condo here in Odenton, Maryland. So anyway, aside from that, let's get on to the review. So we're here to talk about a band that is originated in Bellingham, Washington. That's an indie rock band that, I have reviewed them about a year ago, reviewed one of their older albums, but I just thought today I'd review another one of their records. It's a band called Def Cab for Cutie that was founded in 1997 by Bellingham, Washington musicians Ben Gibbard and Chris Walla. And it eventually evolved into a full band and, released over a few studio albums. Their breakthrough album would happen to be Transatlanticism. Turning the band from a once kind of unknown, band hailing out of a small town outside of Seattle, into one of the most popular and beloved and critically acclaimed indie bands out there. Last year I reviewed pretty much my favorite CD that they have out, called the Photo Album. But I'm here to talk about the band's fifth studio album, and their first album that's released on their current major label deal with Atlantic Records after leaving the indie label Barsec, who still releases the vinyl, pressings of all their records, but all the CDs are released by Atlantic. But I'm here to talk about their fifth album, released in August of 2005. The album is called Plans. And as you can see, it's the CD copy I have of it right here. And this is actually the very first Def Cab for Cutie album that I ever bought, or really heard all the way through. And I do think it's a great album. Def Cab for Cutie is definitely one band that I tend to really appreciate their stuff. This is what the CD case looks like. Pretty nice artwork on here. And there is a booklet in here which does have the lyrics, and some more really nice artwork on there, which the artwork I think kind of fits in with kind of the aesthetic of the record. I think that's kind of one of the key elements of the artwork for an album. There's the CD, and essentially everything underneath it is nothing, so I'm not going to show it. Alright, so this is my CD copy of Plans. So that's my CD copy of the album Plans, and let's talk about the tracks on here. This is an album that caused a lot of concern for Def Cab fans, and pretty much the main reason for that is them signing with a major label, especially considering that they used to be this fiercely independent band that just were totally discriminant against major label signings, because they initially tried to sign with Atlantic actually sometime around 2000, but just didn't go so well because they didn't want to be the biggest band in the world. And I don't think they've ever really, we've never been the biggest band in the world, even though they put out maybe even though there is one song on here that happens to be one of their most, played songs on radio. Um, songs on radio. So yeah, so yeah, unfortunately, a lot of people kind of fell off the bandwagon when this album came out because of the fact that they were signing with a major label, but I'm doing this review today just to kind of say, for all the people trying to, trash the band just because they're on Atlantic Records, just lay it off and just think about what's really important. Think about what really matters. What really matters is that the band still has the ability to write just some very good and very meaningful songs and to crank out some just really melodic and very, kind of lavish musically kind of stuff. So yeah, aside from that little preamble there, let's talk about the album itself, okay? So it opens with the song Marching Bands in Manhattan, and right away with this song, you definitely do see that the band is, going in a new direction, but yet they still sound like Def Cab. But you definitely see that this is a kind of a progression and some growth for the band after their big breakthrough record, which is Transatlanticism. But what I do notice with the lyrics is that Ben Gibbard's got a really nice use of metaphors coming through on the album, showing that this album isn't necessarily all about a boy or a girl. It's there's a lot of, wordplay going on in Ben Gibbard's songwriting. I'll have to look at the booklet to tell you some of the lyrics that really show that. There's a lyric in Marching Bands in Manhattan that say, "If I could open my mouth wide enough for a marching band to march out, they would make your name sing and bend through alleys and bounce off all the buildings." It just has that kind of, there's just something about that line that just kind of pulls you in and, really makes you interested in kind of the stories that this album tells. Here. And I really like how, the song starts out kind of quiet, with this droney organ that goes through in the background, and of course the guitars are coming in, but then eventually it kind of builds up into this catchy little refrain of "Sorrow drips into your heart through a pinhole, just like a faucet that leaks, and there's comfort in the sound, but while you debate, half empty and half full, it slowly rises, your love is gonna drown." It's like a catchy hook that yet has a lot of depth to it, and the band are pretty much known for that. So I think it really does kind of show on this opening track. And then after that is the one of the singles on here, "Soul Meets Body," which once again it is one of the singles on here, and it's one of the band's most popular songs. But yet, I think it's pretty much good that it's popular because because the lyrics really do have a lot of meaning to them. And he says, "In my head, there's a Greyhound station where I send my thoughts to far off destinations." And it's and it's not really the typical kind of poppy single. It's got a catchy feel to it, which would make sense for it to be a single, but it's not the normal 3 verses and 4 choruses. It's more just the first 2 verses come before the 2 choruses instead like that. And then there's the song "Summer Skin," which one of my favorite parts of this track is the layering of instruments. It's one of the more stripped down tracks on here, but I think that's kind of, one of the importances of this track is how well layered and the instruments are. The thing that really sticks out to me in this track is the layering of the bass and drums. The drums have this little driving, chugging rhythm going on, and then the bass line has this kind of, it's definitely like Nicholas Harmer has this, bass line that has a look that sounds kind of funky a little bit. But like I love the way they are tracked together. So like the layering on this track I think is really nice. And this song is kind of about kind of reflecting on younger life and then of course you kind of realize that some of that innocence that you had when you were a kid tends to fade away as you get older, and to the point where there's pretty much none left, and you kind of you kind of tend to leave that behind after a while. That's kind of what the song is about. Then there's the song "Different Names for the Same Thing," which starts out pretty lo-fi, which features Ben Gibbard alone on a piano singing, and then you could also hear like sound effects of like it sounds like maybe a fireplace or some of the crackling sound effects that I hear in the background, giving the intro kind of this lo-fi feel. And there's not very many lyrics in the song, but the lyrics that are on here are inspired by Ben Gibbard was like going on a train or something like that, and he saw like these two people having an argument or something like that. And there's a lot of metaphors going on here, like for example, the boundaries of language. That line is a reference to even though what a person is saying is realistic, the other person might not quite understand it. So that's kind of what the lyrics were inspired by, and I love the ending of this track. Like Jason McGurr's drumming on that song, man, just awesome. And following that is by far one of the most popular, one of the most played songs on a radio for Def Cab for Cutie, which is quite huge, called "I Will Follow You Into the Dark." And I really do feel like I think it is pretty. I think it is pretty great that this song is popular because if you've gone through this kind of situation that Ben Gibbard has, well then you know what he's talking about. So I think the reason why this song became so popular for the band is because it really connected with a lot of people in terms of the message he was saying. I mean, these lyrics, it's like a catchy kind of stripped down acoustic pop song, but with lyrics that are actually pretty dark and intense. I mean, it does mention the narrator does mention getting his knuckles bruised by a lady in black in Catholic school, and she says, "Fear is the heart of love." I mean, you don't normally hear that on a modern rock single right there. Plus, the recording of this song is pretty raw. It's so raw that you may not know this, but if you listen very carefully to the beginning of the song, you can hear Ben Gibbard breathing into the microphone, actually. It's literally that raw. It was kind of a rough recording, the only editing being like vocal compression or something like that, done by him. Chris Walla has been quite a, big member of Def Cab for Cutie, in terms of the production and being a founding member, but he did recently leave the band, which, is unfortunate, but, musicians gotta move on, and I do really like all the production techniques that he provided to the band. And then there's the song "Your Heart is an Empty Room," which, is kind of a song about, how, there's a lot of lyrics that I can relate to on this song, like Home's face, how it ages when you're away. Um, uh, and it's kind of, you know, uh, a song about, uh, that's basically kind of what the song is about, home kind of, aging when you're away and your heart just feels like kind of an empty room. So there's a lot of use of metaphors on this track, as well as it's got kind of this, it's got this kind of jangly guitar tone going on from Chris Walla on here, as well as the unusual use of some sort of, pedal organ or something like that that's being heard on the song is probably played by, somebody in the band. Could be Ben, could be Chris, could be whoever. Um, and then the song "Someday You Will Be Loved" is, you know, uh, kind of a song. We always have that moment in our lives when, you know, you kind of, you kind of find, you kind of find someone that you really care about and love, but then kind of, the next day, you kind of leave them behind and you'll leave a note saying, someday you will be loved, because, you know, yeah, it's, it's more kind of, it's definitely it's kind of melancholy, but at the same time, the song is actually pretty poignant and has a lot of optimism to it. By far one of the most optimistic Def Cab songs out there, but it is still a good song. I do especially love that part at the end where Chris Walla adds in like this kind of, fuzzy, kind of this fuzzy underlying guitar that occurs in the third chorus that I think, really does, help, the song kind of, uh, which I think really does, serve the song really well. That's for sure. It just has this cool sound going on. The song "Crooked Teeth" is a song. It's once again the lyrics on this one are pretty dark for a popular single by the band. And I mean, it does talk about it does kind of make sense Ben Gibbard would write a song like this, because they've been on the road a lot, and when you're on the road a lot, you tend to brave treacherous streets and kids strung out on homemade speed. So it does kind of talk about how you're always braving something, so kind of how you're always kind of forced to brave something that just seems pretty terrifying to you, and it does mention how the sun in retreat made the skyline look like crooked teeth in the mouth of a man who was devouring us both. So this song definitely does kind of reference some of those, kind of random horrors that you kind of, encounter in life. It's nothing too dramatic. It's just, something that, you unfortunately just have to deal with sometimes. And I do think the hook on the song is nice. And it has some pretty nice backing vocals at the end from Sean Nilsson. I like the blend of Gibbard's distinctive lower vocal and then Sean Nilsson singing a higher, falsetto kind of backing vocal. It sounds pretty nice on there. But following that would have to be probably the three best songs on the album, starting with the track "What Sarah Said," which is kind of a song, kind of inspired by some pretty, sad things that, Ben Gibbard has encountered. There's one line in the song that's kind of inspired by, Ben one time was in a hospital and heard this lady break into hysterical tears because he found out he would have to watch her husband die or something like that in a hospital bed or something like that. I mean, yeah, it's definitely pretty, sad, heavy thing there. But yeah, just a beautiful, heart-wrenching song with some really nice, some really nice chords going on the piano. Like, you can tell Ben is pretty drawn to kind of this, this very, just note after note driven piano arpeggio or something like that. And then, some lute echoed, and then some lute, backwards piano, eventually crossfades into the next song on here, Brothers on a Hotel Bed, which, I think is just a beautiful song with this really nice intro of, acoustic and electric piano, sort of complementing each other really well, and I think one thing that really does show up quite a bit on this album is definitely a certain kind of note progression that I'm pretty drawn to. So I can see why it has that long intro, which then eventually, goes into the actual song. So, I'm not really going to mention what that song's about. I feel sometimes I don't really like to tell you what song's about. I just like to let some listeners kind of see what it means to themselves. But I did want to mention that those piano notes that I think sounded really beautiful on that song. And then it closes with the track Stable Song, which is basically kind of a re-recording of, basically kind of a softer, much shorter recording of a song called Stability that was released as it was like an outtake from the photo album that was released on a little EP called the Stability EP. That was a long 11-minute track, but on here it's just a 3-minute, shorter and much quieter track, but I will admit it's definitely a really beautiful song with some very meaningful lyrics, even though there's only just a few on here, but just a really beautiful song, even though I will admit there's probably stronger cuts on here. So yeah, I really like this album. So I do recommend it if you haven't heard it yet, or if you like Def Cab for Cutie. Even though my favorite Def Cab album would definitely have to be the photo album, which I reviewed about a year ago. But yeah, Plans is also a really great album, and Transatlanticism's a great album. So yeah, that's my review of Plans by Def Cab for Cutie. See you for episode 89.